After decades of studying spiritual awakening, Carl Jung reached a conclusion that simplifies everything. Awakening isn't about adding something new to who you are. It's about stopping the exhausting performance of who you're not. Every teaching, every practice, every spiritual concept eventually leads to this same realization. Jung called it the return to the self, and once you truly understand it, the endless seeking can finally end. Today I'm sharing Jung's complete framework for spiritual awakening, the 5 essential truths that once understood make every other teaching unnecessary. This isn't another method or practice. It's the understanding that ends the need for more understanding. Here's what Jung discovered that changes everything. Spiritual awakening has already happened. You're just maintaining elaborate systems to avoid recognizing it. Every moment you spend seeking enlightenment is a moment spent avoiding the recognition that you're already what you're seeking. Jung called this the fundamental paradox of individuation. The search itself is the only thing preventing the finding. Let's start with the truth that ends all seeking. The self you're seeking is the one who's seeking. Jung's first essential truth revolutionizes everything. The consciousness seeking awakening is the awakening you're seeking. You're not moving towards something external. You're recognizing something internal that's always been present. The seeker and the sought are the same. Jung called this the recognition of the self, and understanding it ends the entire spiritual search. Here's what this actually means. Right now, the awareness reading these words is the same awareness mystics call enlightenment. The consciousness questioning whether you're awakened is the awakened consciousness itself. The one seeking the self is the self playing an elaborate game of hide and seek with itself. Jung wrote, "The self is not found through seeking, but through recognizing that the seeker is what is sought." The great joke of individuation is that we spend years becoming what we already are. This isn't a philosophical concept, but a psychological fact Jung observed repeatedly. Every person who achieved what they called awakening eventually realized they hadn't gained anything new. They'd simply stopped pretending to be something limited. The consciousness that was present identified specific ways the ego maintains the illusion of separation from the self. It creates standards for awakening that are impossible to meet, ensuring the search continues indefinitely. It interprets present awareness as not enough, always pointing to some imagined future state. It compares your experience to others' descriptions, finding your awareness lacking. It mistakes simplicity for insufficiency, believing awakening must be complex. The recognition Jung pointed toward is almost insultingly simple. The awareness, aware of these words right now, is the self. Not a personal self, not an ego construct, but the impersonal awareness that exists before thought, during thought, and after thought. It's what remains constant while everything else changes. It's what you are when you stop trying to be something. This truth doesn't require belief or faith. Jung emphasized it can be verified immediately through what he called direct recognition. Right now, notice the awareness reading these words. Notice it's not a thought, but what's aware of thoughts. Notice it's not a feeling, but what's aware of feelings. Notice it's not an experience, but what's aware of experiences. That awareness, plain, simple, already present, is what every spiritual teaching calls enlightenment, self, Buddha nature, Christ consciousness. The implications are staggering. You don't need to change, improve, or develop. You need to recognize what's already developed. You don't need to become enlightened. You need to notice you're already the light of awareness. You don't need to find yourself. You need to stop pretending to be lost. But if this is true, why don't we recognize it? Jung's second truth explains, Your suffering is the self trying to wake you up. Jung's second essential truth reframes everything about psychological pain. What you experience as suffering, depression, anxiety, or crisis is actually the self attempting to break through the ego's defenses. Every symptom is a message. Every crisis is an opportunity. Every breakdown is attempting to become a breakthrough. Jung called this the purposive nature of the psyche. Nothing is wrong. Everything is trying to go right. Here's what doesn't want to face: the self pushing toward recognition. Crisis typically occurs when the gap between who you truly are and who you are pretending to be becomes unsustainable. The self demanding authenticity. What makes this truth so transformative is that it completely reframes suffering. Instead of something going wrong that needs fixing, suffering becomes something going right that needs understanding. Instead of pathology requiring treatment, it becomes psychology requiring consciousness. Instead of problems to solve, symptoms become messages to receive. Jung identified the specific message in different forms of suffering. Meaninglessness indicates you're living from ego instead of self. The emptiness is showing you where fullness lives. Relationship problems reveal where you're projecting instead of relating. Conflict shows where consciousness is needed. Physical symptoms often represent embodied psychological truths, the body carrying what consciousness won't. The self uses suffering strategically. Jung observed it targets exactly where the ego is most defended. If the ego hides in achievement, the self creates failure. If the ego hides in relationships, the self creates isolation. If the ego hides in control, the self creates chaos. Not as punishment, but as precision medicine, applying pressure exactly where breakthrough is needed. This understanding transforms how you relate to difficulty. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you ask, "What is the self trying to show me?" Instead of seeking relief from suffering, you seek revelation through suffering. Instead of numbing symptoms, you receive their message. Jung emphasized this doesn't mean glorifying suffering or refusing help. It means understanding suffering's purpose while working skillfully with it. Medication might be needed. Therapy might help. Support is essential. But underneath these interventions lies the recognition that suffering serves awakening. It's the self's way of breaking through ego's resistance. Yet even understanding suffering's purpose doesn't complete awakening. Jung's third truth reveals why. Integration is the only practice you need. Jung's third essential truth simplifies the entire spiritual path. The only practice necessary is what he called integration. Making conscious what's unconscious, acknowledging what's denied, embracing what's rejected. Every part of you that you reject or deny becomes an obstacle to awakening. Integration is the practice of removing these obstacles. Integration operates through a simple but challenging process Jung outlined. First, recognize what you're avoiding, denying, or projecting. Second, acknowledge it as part of yourself rather than other. Third, understand its purpose and gift. Fourth, consciously include it in your sense of self. This process applies to everything: shadows, traumas, desires, fears, talents, dreams. What makes integration so powerful is that it works with what's already present rather than trying to add something new. You're not developing qualities you lack, but acknowledging qualities you've hidden. You're not becoming better, but becoming whole. You're not fixing yourself, but accepting yourself completely. Jung identified specific areas requiring integration for awakening. Shadow integration means acknowledging your capacity for everything you judge in others. Anima-animus integration means embracing your contrasexual aspect. Men integrating feminine wisdom, women integrating masculine clarity. Persona integration means recognizing your social mask as a tool rather than identity. Self-integration means accepting both your human limitations and your divine nature. The practice of integration happens in everyday life, not special conditions. Every triggered reaction shows where integration is needed. Every projection reveals disowned material. Every judgment points to rejected aspects. Every attraction indicates unlived potential. Life itself becomes the practice when understood through integration's lens. Jung emphasized that integration never ends. It's not a stage to complete, but an ongoing process. As consciousness expands, more unconscious material becomes available for integration. Each integration creates capacity for deeper integration. The process spirals infinitely inward and upward, each turn bringing greater wholeness. But integration alone isn't enough without Jung's fourth truth. If you're recognizing these truths, if you're seeing that you are what you seek, that suffering serves a purpose, that integration is the path, you're already awakening, not approaching awakening, not preparing for it. You're actively awakening right now. Before we explore the final two truths that complete Jung's framework, subscribe and hit sanctification of the ordinary, and understanding it ends the search for special conditions. Here's what Jung discovered. The self doesn't awaken through extraordinary experiences, but through conscious engagement with ordinary ones. Making breakfast can be as transformative as meditation. Conflict with your partner might teach more than years of spiritual practice. Your job challenges might be perfectly designed for your psychological development. The life you're trying to transcend is your spiritual path. Jung wrote, "The Western mistake is believing awakening happens somewhere else, in monasteries, through exotic practices, in altered states. But individuation happens here, now, through conscious engagement with exactly the life you have." This truth manifests in specific ways Jung documented. Your most difficult relationship is your greatest teacher, showing exactly where consciousness is needed. Your recurring problems are co-created lessons designed specifically for your awakening. Your daily routine contains all the opportunities for presence you need. Your current circumstances, however limiting they seem, provide perfect conditions for your particular growth. What makes ordinary life such a powerful path is that it can't be faked. You can pretend enlightenment in meditation, but not in marriage. You can fake transcendence in spiritual settings, but not in traffic. You can perform awakening for others, but not for yourself at 3 a.m. when you can't sleep. Real life tests and reveals your actual development. Jung identified how different life areas serve awakening. Work develops what Jung called conscious competence, bringing presence to productivity. Relationships create what he termed mirrors for projection, showing where you mistake inner for outer. Parenting forces what he called ego sacrifice, putting another's needs before ego preferences. Illness teaches what he named conscious suffering, finding meaning in difficulty. The ordinary path doesn't mean abandoning spiritual practice, but integrating it seamlessly with daily life. Meditation becomes preparation for conscious living. Prayer becomes dialogue with the self throughout the day. Mindfulness becomes natural awareness during routine tasks. Sacred and ordinary unite into a single flowing experience. Jung observed that those who awakened most deeply were often those who engaged most fully with ordinary life, not despite their worldly involvement, but awakening. Jung's final essential truth might be the most liberating. There is no final awakening, no end point, no graduation from the human experience. Awakening isn't an achievement, but an ongoing process. Not a destination, but a way of traveling. Jung called this eternal becoming, and understanding it frees you from the tyranny of spiritual goals. Here's what Jung discovered through decades of observation. Those who claimed final enlightenment inevitably showed new unconscious material emerging. Those who thought they had arrived discovered new territories. Those who believed they had transcended humanity found new depths of human experience. Awakening isn't something you achieve, but something that continues achieving itself through you. Jung wrote, "Individuation is not a goal, but a process. not an achievement, but an ongoing creation. The self doesn't reach completion, but continues completing itself eternally through conscious experience. This eternal becoming manifests in observable patterns Jung documented. Each shadow integrated reveals deeper shadows. Each expansion of consciousness shows vaster territories. Each answer opens new questions. Each arrival becomes a new departure. The journey doesn't end. It deepens infinitely. What makes this truth so freeing is that it removes the pressure of spiritual achievement. You can't fail at something that has no finish line. You can't be behind in a process that has no schedule. You can't do it wrong when every experience serves the ongoing process. The anxiety of, "Am I awakened yet?" dissolves into the flow of eternal awakening. Jung identified how this eternal process operates. It spirals rather than progresses linearly, revisiting themes at deeper levels. It pulsates rather than advancing steadily, expanding and contracting rhythmically. It includes regression as part of progression, sometimes going backward to go forward. It embraces paradox rather than resolving it, holding opposites in creative tension. The absence of final awakening means every moment offers fresh possibility. You're never done, so you're always beginning. You never arrive, so you're always traveling. You never complete, so you're always creating. This isn't exhausting, it's exhilarating, when understood properly. Jung observed that you're seeking. Suffering is the self trying to wake you. Integration is the only practice needed. Ordinary life is the path. There is no final awakening. Jung wrote, "These 5 truths, once genuinely understood, make further seeking unnecessary. Not because they provide all answers, but because they reveal that the questions themselves were based on misunderstanding." Together, these truths create what Jung called psychological freedom from the spiritual search. You stop seeking the self because you recognize you are it. You stop resisting suffering because you understand its purpose. You stop looking for practices because integration is always available. You stop trying to escape life because life is the path. You stop pursuing final awakening because awakening is eternal. This doesn't mean becoming passive or giving up growth. It means what Jung called active acceptance, fully engaging with the process while releasing attachment to outcomes, growing without a goal, developing without a destination, becoming without trying to become something specific. Jung believed these 5 truths represent the maturation of Western psychology's encounter with Eastern spirituality. Not adopting Eastern methods wholesale, but understanding the psychological principles underneath all genuine transformation. Not imitating other cultures, but finding our own way to universal truths. The practical implications are profound. Stop seeking extraordinary experiences. Ordinary awareness is enough. Stop trying to eliminate the ego. Conscious relationship with the ego is the goal. Stop pursuing perfection. Wholeness includes imperfection. Stop waiting for awakening. You're awakening right now through reading these words. If these 5 truths resonate, if something in you recognizes their simplicity and depth, then this might indeed be the last video you need on spiritual awakening. Not because your journey ends, but because your seeking can. Subscribe and hit the notification bell, not for more seeking, but for deeper recognition of what you already are. Comment below which truth most ends your seeking. To dive even deeper into Jung's revolutionary psychology and what it means for your spiritual awakening, click the recommended video on your screen now.